and he's going to activate the live stream here. We're getting ready to activate that. I am going to move everybody over to the side so I can see. Well, I don't know what they're seeing on my screen or not.
I see you.
You see me on my screen? You don't see the budget?
And I see the budget. I see over to the right side, there's like a column of people, which is just Mick and you and me right now, because I guess we're talking. And then I see your computer screen.
Okay. All right. Okay, the YouTube video is up and live. So Todd, if you want to start, we're ready to go.
Okay, so we'll go ahead and get started. This is the May 21, 2020 board meeting for KRTA. I appreciate you all attending via teleconference. I think we're on day 384 of quarantine and 40 days of straight rain. So hopefully everybody's safe and somewhere. Just as a reminder from last, and now that people have been using Zoom more frequently, it's helpful if you mute your mic unless you need to be talking. There'll be a couple of votes, so there'll be plenty of time to alert you as to when you need to unmute your mic and do that. But less background noise will make the meeting go smoother so we can all hear the presentations, because there are a couple of important items today, in particular some COVID issues and the budget presentation by Scott. So we'll go ahead and get rolling. Actually, Doug, why don't you do the roll call so we have it on the record?
Okay.
And tell us who's in the room as well.
All right. In the KRT conference room, there's Travis Garrett, Brett Meadows on staff, Scott Menifee and myself from staff, and then Brett Meadows from the union is in the room with us. Online, we have Mick, Piet, Jamie, Clyde, Chris, I think and Jacob online from staff. I see that Beth Amandus from our attorneys is here. You have, and then I'll go through, I'll let all the board members that are online say their name, and that way, for the record, it'll be on there.
I'm a scholar.
They can all talk.
Valerie Gaynor.
All right.
Case Nagras.
Joe Koval.
Okay.
Dave Casebolt.
Okay.
Dave White.
Kim Holmes.
Todd Goldman.
Jean Arthur.
All right.
Do we have a quorum based on those?
Yes, we do have a quorum. We have a majority of the 6 of the 7 municipalities that are on the board are present.
Okay. Well, I'm going to go ahead and start by getting the minutes approved from the last meeting, and I'm going to probably let Doug do most of the talking so that we're not talking over top of each other. So has everybody had a chance to take a look at the meeting minutes from April 16th, 2020, and is there a motion to approve those minutes?
So I looked over and I move they be approved.
That's a motion by Mr.
Second,
Caval.
Case Nagras.
Second by Jay. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay. Doug, I'm going to let you start rolling with, well, I guess we'll move over on to the financial statements and let Scott get started.
Let Scott do the financials here.
All right, in your packet, like I said, you got the list of financials like always. And again, we knew, revenue, ridership, and everything's going to be down. But if you want to start there on Schedule 2, Statement of Revenue and Expenses, for the month of April, operating revenues, $50,325, and operating expenses of $1,096,773. Comparative analysis there on Schedule 3, year to date for the 10 months this year compared to the previous fiscal year. operating revenues of $1,621,298 compared to the previous year's revenue of $1,854,630. And on the expenses, $10,216,230 compared to $10,407,876. Schedule 4 is a 4-week, the moving totals, and you can see drastic changes there in revenue and ridership, where you're looking at the negative 30, 40, 50%, pretty much in both of them. But again, that's what we've been, kind of hits you when you see it, but we've been looking at that each day, and those are the totals. Farebox revenue schedule there on number 4B. Average there in April, around 13,000 pretty much for every week, and the typical average for a week is somewhere between 25 and 28,000. Actual ridership count from the fare boxes there on 4C for April 2020 with both regular buses and the CAT service, 62,802 compared to the previous year's April, 140,040. 75,700% decrease, 54% decrease. And then, as we had anticipated there with the, Schedule 5, just a statistical analysis. Average passenger a day is 2,399 compared to the previous April, 5,097. And for the month, it was 62,622 compared to 133,023. And what I was getting to earlier there, the excess levy receipts, where we had anticipated, we were just getting a little bit of money ahead of time, and it kind of averaged out for the year, where we were planning that 4% decrease. With the May money coming in of 219,000, year-to-date comparison, we're 4.42% decrease, and that should be about, we thought, holding steady with the budget and everything. That is it, unless anybody has any questions.
As you aware, and the last sheet in your packet, after the self-insurance report was kind of an overview of the ridership with COVID. But, at its peak, we were down 64%, which is good because we were encouraging people not to ride. We wanted people to stay at home. And so those were expected. The other loss in revenue, of course, just to remind you, is that the State House shuttle was canceled last July, and there would have been a 1/12 of that in there. So for the year, that was $100,000 that we lost. So with that being said, we'll attach the financial statements along with the minutes to the board packet if there's no objection to that or no other questions. Okay. Next item on your agenda is approve the payments of any invoices in excess of $5,000. We do not have any that were not in our budget. The self-insurance report and the CAT operations report are attached. There's really nothing of note to put on there. We did settle a couple claims on the self-insurance report. The CAT report, likewise, ridership on CAT has been down. It is starting to pick up now that doctors are seeing people and some of those restrictions are coming off. So that is starting to pick up. As far as the transit mall update, the only update that I have, we haven't done any work on it during this period. The only update I have is that we do have the 5 proposals, and I'll be setting up and working with the committee to interview the 5 teams that have set proposals to do the architectural and design work for that. I'll let the board know of the dates if they want to attend. Since we can now have meetings in smaller numbers, we probably will do those presentations live unless a board member would want to just join in by Zoom. We can videotape it. But our thought process is our conference room is big enough that we could get 6 or 7 people in here and keep social distancing. And we feel that we'll get a better feel for their ideas if we do it live. So I'll reach out to you when the dates are there. That takes us through any old business, unless there's any questions on that. Okay, under new business, again, the last sheet of the packet that was mailed to you kind of gives us our ridership for April, what it was like, and there's a column that has some kind of key notes of what's going on either in the county to kind of give us an idea of how the pandemic was progressing. Obviously, these have changed since then, but the comparisons, the white comparison is a day-to-day comparison as you're reading across. The yellow is to the previous week, then the previous 2 weeks, the previous 3 weeks, and then the previous month. So I just provided that for your information so that you guys could see how it is affecting and what the trend in is ridership as we move forward in that. Ridership levels are still low. They around the first of the month they kicked up a little bit in May, but they've kind of leveled back off. But obviously, it's starting to get more and more people on the bus as restrictions are being lifted by the governor. I think Brett can confirm that you're seeing a little bit more, not at drastic, but I mean, we're not where we were.
It's day by day, but it's going up.
Yeah, so, and hopefully we're still encouraging people to social distances. Our drivers, we're still doing all our protective measures for our drivers and for our vehicles, and working with the health department and the union, again, as Mr. Sayre, Mr. Meadows, and staff have been working together on a lot of stuff. One of the things that has happened is we are now starting vacation season at the end of May. And I've mentioned this to a few of you guys, but back in March when this first occurred, we had to put in contingency plans. What happens if a bunch of our drivers are not available for work? So we ran a contingency markup, which is our runs assignments, to go to Saturday level services during the weekdays, which frees up 4 or 5 bodies basically for us. We never had to implement that until now. And that is because of the upcoming vacations. Before we made the decision to implement it, which it will go into effect next Tuesday after the holiday, we reached out to all the people that had scheduled vacations through about mid-July to see if they were still planning on taking their vacation. Would they work their vacation? Do they want to reschedule their vacation to get our body counts for our numbers? Well, basically it got to the point that we had a few of those operators offer to work their vacation and are planning to or have rescheduled their vacation for later in the year. But we have a slot system, and it's by seniority. It's dictated by our contractual agreement with the union, and we really can't vary from it. So basically, starting the weekend of Memorial Day weekend next week, we're losing up to 6 drivers a week, in addition to our people that are already off, which we have 10 or 11 drivers off. We have 13 drivers off total. Some are on the COVID leave, and some are on long-term disability. We had some health issues with a couple of drivers. So we basically got to the point where we weren't going to have enough people to get the work out. Now, we had 2 choices. We could either go to a reduced level of service, or we could daily just pick and choose, that person didn't show up, we won't run their run. We obviously felt it was more important to go with a consistent service that the general public can look and see a schedule and know when we're going to run. So we opted to go to the Saturday service, notified the union of that last Wednesday or Thursday. We made the decision, and we released a press release to the media first of this week, and we've gotten a lot of calls. Some people aren't happy. Some people, understand. They understand why we're doing it, but they're not particularly pleased with it. We're not pleased with it. We wish we didn't have to do it, but it is a necessity. We just can't go day to day and just wing it how we're going to use our drivers, because they have assigned runs, things like this. They're signed to markup. So we've worked that, ran the bumps on it that we needed to do, and that will go into effect next Tuesday. That being said, we are required contractually to put a new markup out in June every year. We have to do it in 3 months of the year. There are certain times that are outlined in the contract. We know when this new markup goes into effect, we're still going to be short bodies, so we did repost the Saturday service markup. If in mid-July we've got our bodies back, or the end of June, some of these leave programs that were in the CARES Act expire July 25th, and we may get some people back then. But if we get our bodies back, we will ask the union to allow us to run a full markup. They have to sign off when we run an additional markup, because that would be outside the contract, and returning to full service or an increased service level that we are with the Saturday service. So it's a fluid situation. We look at it every week. In the middle of the week, to run a new markup, it takes about 3 weeks from the time we start it, give it to the union, until we can implement it. So even if we decided, say, on July 15th, we were going to go back to full service, it would probably be the first week of August before we were physically capable of doing that. So wanted to let you know that we had to make that decision. It was for the best interest of our passengers to have a consistent system. We really had no choice, and unfortunately it does put fewer buses out there, which is going to make it harder to social distance on the buses. We'll continue to issue PPEs to our employees, and we'll continue to encourage our ridership only to ride if it's essential. And that has to do with the operations side.
I have a question
Sure.
about
Kim.
I have a question about the vacations.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely, they need a vacation. They need time off. They've been working really hard. I mean, I totally get that. But is there any concern about where they might go, and if they come back, they need to be quarantined, or any thought about that if they're going to like a hot spot?
Yeah, that is our concern. Most of the people are doing stay-at-home vacations. A couple people, since I know one of our employees has a camper, and now that they've opened up the lakes, we'll do that. But yes, that is a concern. Where people travel and things like that. We've actually had a retiree that traveled out of state and passed away because they contracted the virus while they were out of state. So people have to be careful. They have to be responsible. But we have, like I said, you're right. They have been working extraordinary. We've been working between 200 and 250 hours of overtime each week during this crisis because of the lack of manpower. And we're wearing people out. We can't keep piecemealing it together, especially now that you add anywhere from 4 to 6 additional people off on vacation. We just have no choice to do that. But yes, we'll have to be conscious of that.
Hey, one thing I want to point out is that it's not time to do an after-action report because we're still in the midst of all this, and it's not time for pats on the back. But the staff has done an extraordinary job to get us to this point. But the drivers and the mechanics and the folks that are in front of the public all day long have done a phenomenal job. I mean, we were fortunate enough at the last meeting to be able to offer the increase in pay to recognize the condition that they're working in and the fortitude that they have and the appreciativeness that we have as a board that they're able and willing to come out and work in the environment that they had to. And I just don't think that can be understated at this point. And when Doug told me that some of these drivers are working, I think 12 to 14 hours a day, maybe slightly longer, that's a phenomenal task to be day after day to keep the operational status that we had, because the drivers that are off taking care of their kids, just like a lot of us have kids that are home out of school and they can't be left unattended in a lot of cases. So they're trying to juggle their family lives and their financial situations and their work responsibilities just as the rest of us are. And I think that that's something that as a board we need to be thinking pretty strongly about the effort that's been put forth to keep the bus system running the way it has for as long as it has.
Gene, you had mentioned something to me. Do you want to?
Yeah,
Talk now.
I'll do it now. Yeah. I'd like to make a motion that the board authorize staff to make a payment of discretionary one-time lump sum bonus to the authority's employees. To qualify for and receive this bonus for work previously performed during the state of emergency, an employee must have been actively working for the authority or CAT during the week of May 10th, 2020. And the net amount is approximately $1,000 to each qualifying employee after required withholdings and deductions are taken out of the gross pay. And I think this would be something wonderful a nice reward for all of our employees that have been working.
I'll second that.
Is there
Okay,
any discussion?
There was a second. I missed who that was.
Mr. Sutphin.
Bob.
Okay.
Is there any discussion on that? First of all, thank you, Gene, for the motion, and the drivers and mechanics and our frontline desk, people, a person at the transit mall, or supervisors that are out on the street answering questions. They've all stood up and done this, and it's been tough. And a lot of them didn't want to be here. A lot of them have kids. A lot of them have young families, and they're scared. But we appreciate them. We could not be where we are today and maintain full service through till this next week without those guys and girls sacrificing. And I just let you know I appreciate it. And I think it was a wonderful gesture of the board to make this motion and to do this.
Is there anyone else that wants to weigh in on this? Gene's proposed an idea that will cost the authority some money, but it also is something that's going to be hopefully acknowledged by the staff and drivers and mechanics, that the importance of their positions and work that they've done to keep everything operating.
Go ahead, Gene.
I think it's well deserved.
Okay. Go ahead, Kim.
I just said I think it's well deserved, and I appreciate them.
I agree. I think it's just amazing that we've been able. Well, not we, because I haven't done anything, but the board and Doug and everyone has kept up just this great service, and I think these guys need to be rewarded.
As far as budget, and we'll get into the budget, we did receive some CARES Acts, and it is covering our salaries and wages for our employees and benefits from the period of April 1st this year all the way through June 30th next year. Plus, we are still under budget on other things. I mean, we've spent less money during this time. We've increased some money in cleaning and things like that and overtime, but there has been some reductions in cost, and your staff always is conscious of cost, and we should be still, even with this additional payment, come in under budget at the end of the year.
Unless there's any other discussion, I'm going to call for a vote. I'll give it just 2 or 3 seconds in case somebody has something they want to add. Okay, the motion that's been made by Ms. Arthur is to provide the employees a one-time payment of net $1,000. So I assume that the taxes would be calculated and paid in addition to that. Is there, are all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye?
Aye. Aye.
Are there any opposed? Motion and make sure the minutes reflect by unanimous consent.
All right, just to let the union know, it'll be a separate check that'll be issued, not in the regular paycheck. And the only thing we're withholding is FICA and Medicare. Those are required by law.
All right.
Okay. All right. So that being said, these kind of two things kind of tie together. we did get an extraordinarily amount of money through the CARES Act, and it was shocking. It didn't go to other agencies. It didn't go to. We were one of the airport got a check, and we got a check, but fire, police, hospitals, the state got a check and passed through $100,000 to the county. But basically, we got over $7.8 million, or around $7.8 million, that we have to use on transit service. And so we incorporated that into our budget coming next year, but that does free up some other money. We've added a few things to the budget that we couldn't normally do. We also added, accelerated a bus purchase for the replacement of 4 large buses that we buy free because it freed up some other money. And we'll get into all that during the budget. But one of the things that's concerning or that we wanted to make sure is we get money from the public safety levy, which funds our fire, our police, our ambulance service, provides money to all the cities and municipalities in the area that have volunteer fire departments, that have fire departments or police forces, and the county has graciously distributed a lot of that levy money to those agencies out of their share. This windfall of federal funds, which was 100% federal funds, unlike our normal federal funds, we have to match 50%. So it freed up some of our levy money and our levy money that we have in reserve, even with the 4% reduction we got this year. Next year we'll be getting a similar amount. We reached out, or I had an idea to reach out to the county commission to see how we could help the other municipalities and the other county agencies that weren't as fortunate as us. And after discussing with them and checking with our legal team, we had a resolution adopted for your consideration today, which I think will pay dividends for us in the future, where we would then make a contribution of the levy funds we're not using, that were supplanted by these funds, back to the county to give to the to pay for these expenses incurred by COVID and things like that. The county was very appreciative of the idea. We worked with Beth to develop a resolution, and I will say, I emailed you all the resolution yesterday, and the resolution was posted on our website to access the meeting for the general public. So it's a long resolution, and it's my understanding, Beth, that because it's posted on the website along with the agenda of this meeting, it wouldn't be necessary for us to read the whole resolution out loud. Is that correct, Beth?
Yes, I agree with that.
Okay. Todd, do you want to add anything about the discussions that we've had with the county? Todd was on the phone call with me when we talked to the county.
Sure. First, Doug and I had talked about this. It was Doug's idea. I completely support it. It shows that we're part of a jurisdictional family operating within Kanawha County with agencies that we work shoulder to shoulder with, and they provide functions to us that we couldn't survive without. I mean, for example, the National Guard's cleaning our buses is at no cost, and it's a service that's incredibly invaluable to the safety of our passengers and drivers. The 911 efforts, the Metro efforts, the Ambulance Authority, all of these agencies are entities that we work with all the time and could not function without. So when we started talking to the county manager and also the Commissioner Carper, president of the county commission, we felt like it was an important gesture because of the funding that we provided and our ability to return some of those resources back to the county so that they could use it to backfill the huge costs that they're incurring to keep the general public safe and keep some of the businesses operating so that KRT's offering a valid service to businesses and residents in Kanawha County. Because if they aren't able to keep the rest of the county operating, our bus service becomes irrelevant. So I think I have an abbreviated version of that resolution I'd like to present, Doug, if you think the time's right. And that'll kind of summarize what the resolution, the longer written resolution says. So the resolution will ensure that emergency services are accessible, continuous, uninterrupted during this unprecedented COVID-19 pandemic, and the KVRTA can provide healthful, safe, and orderly bus transportation services in Kanawha County by authorizing KVRTA to contribute $500,000 to the Kanawha County Commission toward the extraordinary expenses required to provide the aforementioned emergency services caused by COVID-19. So that's the resolution, abbreviated version. You have the written version, and I would request that we have a motion to adopt that resolution from one of the board members.
I read the resolution thoroughly. I totally agree with it, so I move that we adopt it.
I'll second.
That's Mr. Koval, and was that Mr. Casebolt?
Snodgrass.
Mr. Snodgrass, okay. So there's a motion. Now there's plenty of time for discussion if anybody wants to weigh in on the merits of the resolution.
This is Beth Amandus. I was just going to point out that there's an attachment to the resolution as well, that lists out the extraordinary large amounts of expenses that the Kanawha County Commission has incurred related to the COVID pandemic and rising. And so the exhibit as of that date, which was, mid-May, was well over $1 million already. It was $1,657,000. So you can refer to that if you want more information on what we're contributing toward. A large amount of that is hero pay, right, to make sure that the front line continue to be staffed.
Yeah, those were the expenses for March and April that the county has. The May expenses numbers aren't on there. It's amazing what it's cost, and obviously the county with their $100,000 they got from the state and passed that through to and then passed additional monies that they took out of their general fund. We think it's the right thing to do. We're part of the team. We all work together. We're at Metro 911. They've been providing us with PPEs for our drivers. The Kanawha Charleston Health Department, I call, pick up the phone. I get right through to somebody to answer any questions we've had. We've had some scares with employees about possible testing and things like that. And I just want you to know that KRT, is an important part of the county, obviously, and the city. And while we aren't a quote unquote standalone county agency, we serve everybody in Kanawha County. We do work as a team, and we are reliant on the county for the majority of our funding, to the tune of about $8 million a year through the safety levy that they set the rate for. So we just think it's the right thing to do. We, like I said, got an ungodly amount of money, and we just feel that this is a good token to help the county out, and I would urge the board to adopt the motion.
Are there any other members that'd like to speak on behalf of the resolution? Okay, if not, there's a motion and a second on the floor to adopt the resolution. All those in favor of the resolution signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
Are there any opposed? Hearing none, the motion's adopted by unanimous consent. And Doug, if you and Scott can work to execute the rest of that plan and make the county manager aware that it's been adopted.
We'll do that.
Hey, I have a question. I may have missed it. I'm sort of embarrassed to ask it, but I'm going to anyway. Have all the drivers and all employees been tested, and how often, and who pays for it?
Well, number one, we requested that all our employees be tested, but they are still not mass testing. They haven't tested all the firemen. They haven't tested all the police. They haven't tested, unless there's an outbreak. That's the only place they're doing mass testing. The testing is free. We have the Kanawha County Health Department. Dr. Young and I have talked, and she has told me that if we have any suspected case, that to reach out with her, and we've given the number to a couple employees, that they would immediately get those employees in and tested, and immediately, or if they felt they were exposed. And without going into any HIPAA information, we did have a employee whose wife did test positive. Their child tested negative. The individual was immediately tested by the health department and has been negative, as well as, again, the child was negative. But the health department, under an abundance of caution, has told me not, that they want to hold that person off for a period before they return them to work. So that's the only one that's kind of been really in-house. Everyone else that's been tested, we've had probably 10 or 15 people that have been tested, and everybody else has been negative. But there is not mass testing. If they would offer that mass testing, she would let me know. But the health department does that. There are no charges to the employee for that.
Is it mandatory that the drivers wear a mask? They're so vulnerable. Everything gets on a bus.
Yeah, we put up a cough curtain, a clear curtain to separate the driver's area. We've blocked off the 6 seats. We're doing our cleanings. Each driver has the opportunity to have a mask, and each driver's issued a can of Lysol. And when we have it, we try to give out a Perel, but that's like liquid gold right now. You can't really find that kind of stuff in the small bottles that the drivers can carry. So when a driver uses up his can of Lysol, he brings it back in and we give him a new one. Clyde and Jamie in our purchasing department have been scouring the market, trying to find supplies to keep them. We've been able to keep up to date. We have probably 300 masks, 300 to 400 masks right now available for our employees. Some are cloth and long-term, and some are the disposable kind. So, and then also we give them gloves. We're doing about everything the ATU International has asked us to do, and the local union of what they would recommend. We're doing everything that's possible to keep our drivers safe. And I wish all of them would wear a mask. Some of them opt not to, and but that's their personal choice.
Okay, thank you.
Any other COVID-related questions or topics? If not, I suppose, Doug, we're ready to move on to the budget presentation.
Okay. Yeah, we did the vote already, right? I missed that.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. You guys, let me minimize you guys on here, and so I can see the budget presentation. Hold on. Okay. So you guys can see it now?
I have hard copy here.
Yeah, you were mailed a hard copy, but there's also a copy that I'm sharing my screen that you guys can look at. So
I can see it, Doug.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to go to the second slide. The second page of the thing, and it lists the 7 or 8 major factors that are affecting our proposed budget for next year. Obviously, it's the second year of our new levy formula, 43.5% as opposed to 47 in the old one. And as Scott mentioned during our financials, as we expected, we saw about a 4% decrease in levy receipts for the year. The budget reflects also now, last year we did budget the State House revenue for the shuttle because we weren't notified they were canceling it until late June. So we incorporated that loss, and again, that was about $105,000 of revenue a year. We have known fuel costs, and when we get into fuel costs, I have another comment on that a little bit later. known labor expenses associated with the second year of our CBA. We have funded an additional, or we're asking you to fund an additional on-street operations supervisor. We have added with the extra money that we got through COVID, we added some contract maintenance facility repairs that needed done that have kind of been on the back burner just because we didn't have the funds available. It takes into account our COVID-19 expenses, and then again the money, the CARES Act money, which was substantial. I'm actually going, as you can see now, we're going to the page 3 of your budget presentation, which shows our projected what our budget was for 2020. The second column is our estimate, where we estimate we're going to end up, and then that's the third column is the proposed budget for 21 compared to the expected change, where we're going to end up, where we expect we end up. The budget is the fourth column, and then the overall percentage change is the fifth column. And sorry for stumbling through that. So passenger fares. Last year we budgeted 1,844. This year we think we're going to come in around 1,722. We're actually budgeting $12,600 less than that, 1,710, because we just don't know how long the COVID's going to be effect. And plus, again, you take out the 100,000 that we know we're not going to have. Charter service, we budgeted the same amount that we budgeted last year. Really, we're not doing a lot of charters. It comes kind of in spurts during football season. We're able to get some through, but after that, we don't get any. So that's flat. Advertising revenue, we're in the last year of the contract. They're really the only person advertising now on the buses is the lottery and a few other small organizations. We're going to be going out to bid or an RFP this fall to look at renewing a contract, but we're only going to expect about $11,000 this year, and then so we're budgeting 10. Again, non-transportation revenue. This is revenue generated. The biggest part is interest income, things like that. It's sales of fuel to other agencies, things like that. We budgeted 259. The first part of the year was really good, and when we did this budget, it might not come in at 288, but with the way the investments have gone recently, so we're budgeting only 200,000 for that next year. So that's a 22% decline on that line item. Totally, we're looking at last year 2.145. We're coming in a little bit over 2 million. We're budgeting 1.928. So basically a 10% reduction in revenues for next year. Operations. These costs, as I said, are pretty much known. Most of them, we've got about everything in. Still waiting on one or two of the insurance final amounts, but we budgeted 8.6. We're budgeting about $70,000 more, $75,000 more for a less than 1% increase. We think we're going to come in at 8,081. And again, this is operations that includes wages, fringes, fuel, things like that. Vehicle maintenance. I'm sorry, fuel would be under vehicle maintenance, right? Yeah, I was wrong. Fuel is under vehicle maintenance. Vehicle maintenance, last year we budgeted 1.936. We estimate we're going to come in at 1.8. We're actually increased that a little bit for some projects going on, and parts increase. So we increased that by 1.24. I will tell you that our fuel prices starting in November will go down compared to what we're paying now. We did, at suggestion of Mr. Casebolt, we did reach out to our fuel supplier to talk about last month when fuel was selling for negative $34 a barrel of oil. We reached out to see if it would be possible to, one, get out of our contract. 2, readjust our contract. Or 3, add on another year at the end of our contract. And there was a lot of hoops involved. We could add on a year. We'd have to go out to bid again. It would take about 3 months to do all that. And since then, fuel prices are starting to increase. I believe they're up 15% this week. So we haven't undertaken that obligation as of yet. But right now, we do have a reduction in fuel next year. Slightly. The second year was slightly less than the first year. Non-vehicle maintenance. This is maintenance on the facility and pays for our work around here. We budgeted $445. This is where we put in some additional money to do some work here. We have some doors that are rusted. We need a new forklift. We're replacing it. We're talking about doing some painting and some other facility improvements in-house. So we actually put in an extra $110,000 for those projects. Those were added after we found out about the CARES Act money. General administration, again, you have an additional staff member in there. We have to, Mr. Piet is retiring next year, and maybe another staff member might be leaving next year. So we have to some cost involved with that payout. So that was a 3% increase on that line item, based on where we estimate that we came in on. Overall, it was only a $60,000 increase from where we budgeted last year. So that brings up the total budget for operating expenses. This past year, we were just about 12.9 million. We expect to come in, well, we have to add that, probably be about 12.4 when we're all said and done. With the time of the budget, we were at 12.17. We're anticipating a budget of $13,201,776, or a 2.3% increase in budget, which is including with what we've put in there, not that great, or not that, with the additional work, not that extraordinary. So you can see revenue's down, budgeted down, expenses budgeted up, but the net increase is a 2 point. We'll get to that one on the next one. Okay, so now how do we do that? So that operating loss for 2020 budgeted was $10,754,000. Middle of the page, the big red line. We expect it to be $10 million, and I would add another $150,000 to that number, so $10,300,000 to $400,000. And the new operating loss would be $11,273,000. Depreciation is a bookkeeping item, so I don't even understand why it's on there, but it has to be. Let me go back to that screen. I'm sorry. So down at the bottom, let's talk about federal funds. Normally, we use about $2.4 million in federal funds. Going into this year, before all this hit, we thought we would use $2.5 million, and then we'd have to use $2.5 million of local levy money to match that, and then make up the shortfall up to our budget. So our total income from non-operating sources would have been $10,000,008, and then you add in our generated revenue to that number. Where we're coming in at is right around $10,000,006 in revenue. Again, the levy we budgeted, that's always a guess number there. We know the federal what it was. So the actual change, you go to our budget, that's why you can see the $7,778,442 plus our levy money. So you can see that that shows you that the excess will have a net income of $2.3 million next year, and that again, $500,000 of that you just authorized to be used another way. So let me. We'll talk a little bit about the capital, and I know I'm going really fast, so just interrupt me if you need me to stop. Excuse me. Our ongoing grant activities, we're closing out a grant. We just have 4 vehicles left to buy that, to purchase. We're going out to bid for those next month or July, I believe, and those will be delivered. We want them delivered right around the 1st of next year. So that grant is still open, but we'll be closing out. Our signage project is just about done. We now have to, we're down to installing. We've got everything in. We know we talked about the transit mall earlier that kind of got put on hold by COVID. We were really moving on that, but I still think there's a chance that construction now is pushed off and probably until fall or winter of 2021. So next year we're going to withdraw about $1 million to $1.7 million out of our capital reserve account, and I'll show you that here in a few minutes. New capital items to be submitted to FTA. Normally we don't have federal funds to buy buses in this amount, but because we got that $7.7 million, we were able to take some of our federal funds and move them to replace 4 of our large vehicles. These vehicles run between around $450,000 is about approximately the cost of them. So we would use $387,000. We're setting aside $387,000 of the capital reserve account, along with $1.5 million in federal funds. We talked to you about this earlier. The technology has gotten to the point where on our modems and router systems, the current system that we have can only handle 1 input, and after December 31st of this year, will no longer recognize and work with the internet service that is out there being provided. So this is a mandatory update that we have to do, and it comes out to about $4,000 a bus. So it's a $100,000 project. Or I'm sorry, not that much. $2,000 per bus. It's a $100,000 project. Originally, we were going to completely fund this with local funding, but since again we got the other money, we've included it in the capital grant that I have in draft form prepared to submit to FTA. Our telephone system is the next thing. We've set aside $35,000 to upgrade it. We're still evaluating whether we're going with a hardline or voice over internet protocol. If we go with a hardline, that cost is going to be significantly more. What we're working on getting that. We think we'll probably go voice over internet protocol. Is kind of the planning as it is. And then for computer hardware, software, and a security system update, we are required by federal every year to spend X amount of our money on security. We are set aside $34,000. So these are all in the new capital grant, which we've drafted. We have not submitted it because we have not gotten approval from the board yet. The operating grant has been submitted and already approved. So we are already drawing some of that $7.7 million to cover salaries. So what we need to do in the capital reserve account is transfer $666,000 to it to match those projects and the unobligated federal funds that's sitting there. We've asked to put an additional $500,000 to fully fund the transit mall renovation project whenever it gets done. The new capital grant that we just wrote for, we need $423,000 to do that. This isn't this year or next year, but at some point we need to replace our driver fixed route management system that runs the buses and runs everything, and that's estimated about $600,000. So that's in the local capital reserve account. And then we just did some adjustments for that. With that being said, this is what your new capital reserve account looks like, and I'm sorry it's so small. But basically, as of 7/1/20, this is what is out there that we have already committed to in previous years, and what we're adding to this year, and what we will be we anticipate will come out of the account this year. So basically, when you added up all those items that I talked to you before, we're basically adding just over $2 million to the capital reserve account. of which, over $1 million of that is to match federal funds that are out there that we have to match, and then a good portion of it is to fulfill those other projects. I will, up on top in red, you'll see the Volkswagen settlement. We have submitted all the information and done everything we need to do to finally get our share of the Volkswagen settlement. I just have no idea when it's coming in. At some point, we'll get some money there, and to the tune about $440,000. So, that being said, here is the kind of a recap of where we are. We estimate at the end of next year we're going to have $6.9 million in the capital reserve account after what we put in and what we spend and everything. And then the next sheet, and again I'm going fast, is our cash flow sheet. We entered into this fiscal year with $6.3 million. I'm on the next page. So our operating revenues, our Kanawha County levy receipts, our federal grant funds brought in another 12.6, giving us available cash of $19 million. We spent the 12.1. Obviously, that's going to be a little bit higher. I think it's going to be around 12.4 when it's all said and done. In that COVID non-budgeted expenses, that $600,000 includes the $500,000 you just authorized. So that is taken out because that check would be written this fiscal year. So that's $12.8 million uses of cash, which means that our year-to-date cash flow went down just under 100,000, just over 100,000, from 6.3 to 6.191. So if you bring that number up to the top going into next year, we have our operating revenues that are in the budget, 1.928. Our Kanawha County receipts that we're budgeting, which is the same as this year, because there shouldn't be an additional 4% decrease. It should be the same that we come in at this year. This is where that federal money came in that we got, so that gives us a total available cash of $24 million. And then the operating budget, the capital budget we just went over, using $15 million. So our growth next year will go from, I'm sorry about that, didn't mean to highlight that, from 6.1 to about $8.9 million, even with everything that I've outlined on this budget for you. So I will honestly say that I've been at KRT now 33 years. We're in the best financial position we've ever been in during that time, and it's amazing. And that's the recap of the proposed budget. This is what we're asking you to adopt. And with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions anyone might have, or Scott will. And Scott did all this work. I just get to read it to you. So.
Does anybody have any questions for Doug? There's a lot of information. Took time to look at it before the meeting. One thing I'll point out that hopefully you've gotten the vibe from the presentation is that because of the federal funds that were made available through the CARES Act, is that we've been able to do some projects and kind of put ourselves in positions to do projects at an expedited schedule than what we originally would have anticipated. And I think what you'll see is over the coming year or 2 years that we'll be able to approve some projects that'll make the whole KRT experience for the staff and drivers and our riders better by advancing some technology that we wouldn't otherwise have been able to do. And hopefully we'll get pair up with the city and be able to get the transit mall project rolling so that we can improve the vitality of that part of downtown Charleston and make a better experience for our riders there as well. So the funding is going to be put to good use. Well, if there's no other comments, the next thing to do would be to vote to approve the budget. Is there a motion for that?
I move we approve the budget.
I second.
Okay, I know that was Mr. Koval, and was it Jay Snodgrass?
Larry Bailey,
And
second.
Mr. Sutphin was making the motion too. So.
That's all right. It doesn't make any difference who makes it as long as you get it.
So there's in a second. Is there further discussion about the budget? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion is approved. Thanks for the presentation, Doug.
Yeah, I'm sorry I went so fast. I would like to just discuss our next meeting going forward. I assume in June we'll still be at the point that we have to do this via Zoom, because while our conference room is somewhat large, if we have all our board members here, even if I kick out staff and guests, that's still going to put enough people in here. We're not going to be able to social distance 6 feet apart. So it might get to a point where we might have be able to still do the meetings maybe in July live. We miss seeing our board members and interacting with you guys. You know, I'm sure you guys missed the donut and everything, and we do prefer to have you guys in person so that we feel that we can answer more questions and do all that. But we still are kind of at the whims of this pandemic, and we hope that everybody is safe and that we get back to somewhat normal somewhat soon. Todd, that's all staff has.
Okay, is there any other business that the board members want to discuss?
One thing, Todd, before you get off this thing, you're not going to have an opportunity to have your hands on this kind of money again. So you need to think big. If you want to do something with it, and we all know, and I hate to be this way, but if you sit on cash, somebody finds out about it, and next thing you know, you're not sitting on it any longer. You need to think big, like solar panels for the building or some real nice whatever the KRT needs. And you've already done the budget for this year. It's a little late, but I just thought I'd throw that out there.
That's a fantastic observation. I think you're right. I mean, any of the ideas that people have and want to discuss or present, that bring them on, because something like that's definitely could be feasible.
And when it comes to a capital project, like, for example, if we wanted to undertake something like that, there's no restrictions. We don't have to write just $1 grand a year. We can always do that. So yeah, if we come up with ideas, that's why we kind of brainstorm some of the deferred maintenance that we've done or we've deferred. That's why we wanted to try to incorporate that in this year's budget, because it is easier to come to you with bigger ticket items than a bunch of small ticket items at the end. So we do that. Obviously, I mentioned this once before. The purchasing bill that we ran in the West Virginia legislature goes into effect on June 5th, which actually allows us more flexibility in purchasing, and as opposed to going out to RFP. That threshold is raised from $10,000 to $25,000. So some of these smaller deferred projects we will be starting after that point.
Very good.
It sounds like we've wrapped up our meeting topics, and appreciate everybody's attendance. Stay dry and stay well, and we'll see you in a month.
And I will just
stay safe.
Okay, one other thing. I just want to point out we did not receive any email questions during the meeting, so just from the general public. So I do want to point that out. All right. So is there a motion to adjourn? Is that what I'm hearing?
We are.
Take care, guys.
All right.